and welcome back to another episode of the Health Home podcast. It is currently 11:11 on the 11th of July. We love the manifestation numbers. But I'm joined by the gorgeous Robyn Taaffe, who's also known as the Wellness Nurse on Instagram. Say hello, Robyn.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. I was on Robyn's podcast a few months ago now. So if you want to go have a listen to that, that was like part one of our conversation probably. And now we're going to have a role reversal and we're going to chat a little bit more about your journey. So can you tell people listening a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Robyn. I qualified as a nurse around 8 years ago now. And I've always kind of been interested in lifestyle medicine and kind of what we do in our day-to-day life affects our health. So I went on to study to be a nutritionist, a personal trainer, and then meditation and mindfulness teacher. So now I kind of combine all of my skills to really help people with their self-care and just looking after themselves, mind, body, spirit, not just body.
Gorgeous, I love it. Yeah. I think that's what drew me to what I'm doing as well, is like the bigger picture and the mind body connection. And it's kind of like we can study to a certain point with like the medical system and science and stuff. And I feel like you can be very much like boxed off or compartmentalized or limited in your knowledge. And then I feel as you kind of get into it more and more, you're like, wait, there's more to this. You're like, what is this thing I don't know?
Yeah.
What do you think it was that got you interested in this kind of new perspective and this more holistic way of looking at things?
I think it was very much my own health struggles. When I was 13, I was diagnosed with a hereditary heart condition called cardiomyopathy, and it actually runs my family. So my granny had it, my mom, I have it, my sister, my cousin. And it was one of those health problems that was really influenced by my lifestyle. So what I did day to day really affected how my health would be. And I kind of, when I was a teenager and growing up, I really didn't look after myself. Drank a lot. I was a smoker, didn't eat well, didn't sleep, didn't manage my stress. The usual, like the usual teenage stuff. But I couldn't really afford to do it because anytime I did, I would go in and you get like, it's called your heart function checked. And they'd be like, look, your heart function's not great. And it was really starting to show up my health. And then when I was 26, I remember going in and my cardiologist was like, yeah, you kind of need a defib pacemaker. He was like, your heart function is so low that we can't just manage it with medication anymore. And I remember just being like, oh shit, now I have to really start getting myself together. And I really didn't want to get one. It would have meant so many changes. Like you can't really exercise with a pacemaker. Even things like having kids and stuff would be a lot more difficult. And it was kind of the wake up call I needed to be like, okay, you have to change. You've got to start looking after yourself. And that sparked my interest in my lifestyle and what I could do. Like, I think for a long time, I put all the responsibility in other people. I was like, okay, I'll take the medication. This is all in the doctors. If I'm sick, it's their fault. Well, that wasn't it. Like it was on me, that kind of way. So that is what sparked so much of it for me and kind of gave me the why to actually change my lifestyle a lot. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. And did you get the pacemaker in the end, or did you? No, yeah. So you decided I'm going to take matters into my own hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I was like, I'm going to do everything I possibly can. And if I go in and they're still like, look, you still need it, I can accept it and be like, okay, I didn't not try. I did my best. I can say moving forward that it was out of my control. And I was so lucky that eventually, like it took time. I remember going into so many appointments being like, today's the day. They're going to tell me I'm so much better and I don't need it. And I go in, he'd be like, no, look, we have you on the list. And then I go in and he'd be saying, oh, look, your heart function's getting worse. And then one day I went in and I was like, do you know what, universe? I surrender. I'm like, I've done every single thing I possibly can. I've changed my food. I'm sleeping more. I manage my stress. I've changed my mindset, my beliefs around it. And there's nothing else I can do. And I kind of got to a place where I accepted it. I was like, okay, I just have to get a pacemaker. I was like, it's my health. I can't fight against this anymore. And I went in and he goes, you don't need the pacemaker anymore. Your heart function has improved more than anyone I think I've ever seen.
Wow.
And yeah, just go off, keep taking your medication, keep doing what you're doing. And that was, what age am I now? I'm 32. So like 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago.
Amazing, amazing. So that was a good long journey then from the
Yeah.
point of initially being told to when you were given the kind of all clear.
Yeah, it took time. It took, because I was learning so much as well, right? You can't make all these changes at once. Like I had
No.
to start really slowly. And like I started with my food, and then I started with doing a bit of exercise. And then I realized like I was kind of looking after my body, but like my mind, how I was looking at it, my outlook really wasn't where it needed to be. And
Mm,
like I'm such like our beliefs influence so much of what happens in our body. And like I couldn't be going around being like, my health is so shit. I'm never going to get better. My heart function's really bad. Life is so unfair. With that mindset, I wasn't going to help myself move towards where I wanted to be. And that was the last part of it. And that's why I studied the meditation teaching, because I kind of kept looking up and I was doing research and I was like, okay, what can I do for this? And everywhere was like, have a meditation practice just to build that awareness, to kind of start being able to see, okay, what are my thoughts about this, my actions, my beliefs? And then you can create change. So the mindset was huge.
yeah, amazing, amazing. And I think it's great that you've been able to tap into that now. I think years ago, it's funny how your journey started with food. I think a lot of people's journey starts with like food or exercise. And even like my own, I thought that like with IBS years ago, I was the same. And it was like you have to take laxatives, or with PCOS, you have to go on the pill. There's nothing else that you can do. And it was like, okay, let's try and start with stress. Let's start trying with physical exercise, with calming down. I was typical go, 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 like literally hadn't a second in my routine. It stressed me out even looking at it. But the same thing that I was like being told, this is my options, it's my only options, and that's it. When they didn't, they made me feel worse as such and kind of worsened my condition. I was like, same as you, okay, let's fucking make this happen. Let's really try and come at this from all angles, give it my 110% effort, and then we'll see, is that my only option? Is it actually my only option?
Yeah.
But it's so great now. I think a lot of more awareness we have around beliefs and mental health and emotional health, as much of an impact it has on your heart, on your digestion, on everything. I don't think it was even recognized many, many years ago as something that was important to look at. So it's incredible. It's actually so interesting being home as well. It's such like, I feel like there's such extremes of like people still in that old mindset and people who are very much kind of progressive and like open-minded and stuff.
Yeah.
It's even really funny. Like today I was driving around the corner, like this is obviously something so small and irrelevant, but I was driving around the corner and you can't see to a certain point beyond the cars because there's like big massive vans. So I
Yeah.
like drove up as much as I could and she starts zooming towards me. So I start reversing and I was like, okay, my bad, whatever. And she just like nods her head in shame. She's like this to me. It's like the old lady shame.
Oh
But
no.
I was just like, okay, I've initially feeling that shame of like, oh my God, I did something really wrong. And then I was like, hang on a second. It was just driving and not knowing someone was coming at me and then pulling back. But it's so funny how like we can be so quick to like judgment and like
Mm.
shame people and blame people and all these different things. And that's what's been really interesting about coming home here, just observing people, observing people's reactions and seeing how we have, this is the biggest tangent ever, but seeing how we very much can still have this within us.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult, like what you said, to start challenging those new beliefs, to start challenging and becoming this new version of yourself. It's not something that happens overnight at all, especially if you're in the same environment as well. Did you find like being in the same environment was difficult for your change and kind of implementing that, or did you just have like tunnel vision?
I kind of had tunnel vision because like I really had a clear place that I wanted to get to, and I really didn't want to end up with pacemaker and all of these health struggles. So it kind of kept me like really laser focused. And I remember like even when I was learning about how our minds affect our body, and this is not to say like I've been on medication since I was 13 and I will be for the rest of my life, and they always play such a huge part of it, but it's like a blend between everything. It's like the Western medicine with what I do myself. But even little things like we see so much like with in research, like they use a placebo, and which is when they give someone basically a medication, but it doesn't have an active ingredient. And when they believe that it's going to cause a change or a symptom, it does, because our beliefs change our chemistry. And I remember just learning about that and being like, okay, my beliefs and my thoughts about this don't match where I want to be. And I really had to learn to build some awareness. And that's where meditation and mindfulness was huge for me, because for so long I was in unawareness. I didn't realize, I wasn't aware of what I was thinking or my beliefs about it. I just went about my day and thought about it the way I always did. I didn't realize even the fact, like I always say to people, I'm like, you're not your thoughts. You're the one who hears them. And I remember I read Michael Singer's book, The Untethered Soul. That was one of the first ones I read, and he had said that line that you are the one that hears your voice, and he even gets you to do this thing where you say in your mind your name over and over again. He's like, "Are you the one saying that, or are you hearing it?" And I remember just sitting there trying it. I was like, "Oh, I'm the one that hears that. Like I'm the observer. I'm not the voice in my mind." So I can start to practice watching my thoughts and my beliefs and the loops I have around stuff in my life, and I can change that. So that took time. Like that took a lot of time. And I think it's part of the reason that I'm so passionate about giving people the tools now, because like nobody teaches you about that at all.
I know. I was the same with reading The Power of Now. Hearing it, sorry, I did listen to the Audible The Power of Now for the first time, because I would have had a lot of like intrusive thoughts quite consistently with anxiety. And it was like actually being able to separate myself from the thought. It was like this thing that I was like pushing to the side, and I was like, whoa, it's clear here for a split second. I was like, what the fuck is this sorcery? I was like, what is this magic? Because again, no one teaches us this stuff. But again, so I'm interested to see your experience about like the environment that you're in. If you were you in a hospital setting while you were doing this in your nursing career?
So I started off in care of the elderly when I qualified. I didn't go straight into the HSC because I wanted a bit of a better salary. And it was also like 10 minutes from my house. So I went into care of the elderly, but I was working like night shifts, and we were very short staffed. It was a really high stress environment, not much time for self-care. And you also in healthcare, I find that because it's so stressful, so many of us are so unhappy and struggle that it doesn't make for a nice working environment either. Like instead of kind of coming together, everyone, like you're kind of in survival mode. You're just doing whatever you can to get through your day and
Yeah.
tick off your huge list of things to do. So I was there for the first kind of year and a half, and that was actually when I started reading. I remember on night shifts, I would bring in like a new book and try and read about it. Like I would read like Abraham Hicks books, or I would read the Eckhart Tolle and stuff, just to kind of start broadening my mind, because I knew that I needed to be more intentional with my thoughts and try and learn about this to expand kind of my tools. But it really came to a head when I went into, after that, I did pediatric palliative care. Um, and that was so tough. It was permanent nights, really high stress. Like you don't see daylight. You literally work your night shift, you come home, you have to try and sleep and then get up again the following afternoon or whatever to go back in. Really sad. And that was when I really struggled. I had no time for self-care. I was going in, I was given everything. I was literally emptying my cup, and I never filled it. I never did anything for myself. And I actually experienced burnout while I was there. I kind of it was a really kind of hard time, and I didn't really understand what burnout was. I was kind of that mentality where it's like, okay, yeah, you're tired, you're working loads, you get a bit teary sometimes, like that's normal, just keep going. But it wasn't normal. It was
Mm,
like my body was kind of saying to me, look, I can't do this anymore. I need some TLC, I need a break. And like the saying goes, it kind of gave me no choice, but I had to take a break. So my
yeah.
environment with nursing, I think it sparked a huge interest and kind of pushed me as well to look into tools and what I could do. And then it gave me no choice.
Mm,
It's like, okay, I've kind of reached that breaking point where like I don't have a choice but to look after myself. And when your health is gone, like it's the foundation that everything else rests on. So like it was affecting my relationship with my husband. It was affecting my happiness. It was rippling into every part of my life. So I did find the nursing environments that I was in at the start quite difficult. And I think as well that's why I ended up gradually moving towards a different way of using it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I also would have tried to change, like what I spoke about, trying to, like, change my health for the
Mm.
better, moving away from disordered eating or eating disorder, um all in the time while working in a fast, high paced environment of a hospital, of an emergency room.
Mm.
So I know how that can quickly lead to being burnt out, like what you said, that survival mode, because it's quite normalized. Like that setting, it's quite normalized that everyone is like, you skip your breaks, like you might not get one.
Don't
Everyone
sleep
is,
for hours.
yeah, everyone's quite literally running around off their feet. They're like dealing with people who may be emotional or distressed. You're trying to fight for beds, you're trying to get people testing done. There's so many things coming at you that you have to be in your reactive mode. There's no such thing as being in your parasympathetic rest and digest. It just doesn't exist. Like
Mhm.
if someone has some top tips, fire them all in. No, I'm only joking, but like it's a normal response to be like that. And that's what I want to help people understand today. I think so. I feel like sometimes, and I want to talk about burnout today, that in careers, some people can almost feel like it's their own fault that they've gotten to a state of burnout, be it physical, mental, emotional, all collectively, that they feel like they're not able to cope with the workload, they're just not cut out for this type of job, they're not, insert whatever kind of blame and shame language here,
Yeah.
because other people are able to do it. But so just because someone's able to do it doesn't mean that you should be doing what they're doing. We shouldn't like glorify it, and you shouldn't feel bad just because you can't do something that's unrealistic to begin with in the first place. And I think what's difficult as well is that some people have like different values, some people have different health issues as well. So like yourself and myself, we've got health issues, we will probably feel the effects of the stress and the burnout a little bit more. We're probably a little bit more sensitive than other people that may be able to cope if they don't have health issues. But then also your body does adapt with time, and your body will shut down things that are non-essential to survive in response to stress. So just because they may look like they're coping on the inside or the outside may not mean it's all that true on the inside. But I suppose one of the questions that we had was, and yeah, I suppose maybe this is a bit of a something to, like, there may be many different angles to cover with this, but what would you have done differently to avoid burnout at the beginning of your career in the HSE?
So I think the first thing I want to say as well is I actually did a podcast with Sinead Brady, the career psychologist. And I remember she saying to me, she was like, with workplace environments, she was like, sometimes the issue is with the system and you
Mm,
cannot change that. So with healthcare, the issue is very much systematic in that, like, you can't go in and change it. And like you said, if everyone is doing it, you feel like you just have to do it as well. So it's very hard to turn around and be like, here, I'm really tired. I need a day off. Because you know yourself, people look at you and be like, oh, give over. Like,
yeah, the judgment, yeah.
short staffed. It's not easy. What I would say to someone who's in the HSE or struggling, to arm yourself with some tools. Like, I had no tools and I didn't really understand how stress works in the body. I didn't understand how it would affect me. And one of the best ways that I've heard it described is if you think about your stress as a cycle, right? So you have your stressor, which may be an email that you get from work or a thought on the way in of all the things you need to do today or all the things that could go wrong. That activates your fight or flight response, which is fine. That's what our body is designed to do. But what our body needs to do then is return to safety. So you're stressed, you have a stress response to protect you, and then we go back to that rest place. That doesn't happen.
Mm,
I think that so many of us just have what happens is we have stressor, stress response, another stressor, stress response. And if you think about that in a cycle, it just goes around and around and around, especially in the likes of healthcare and stuff, because think of the amount of stressors you have in a day between patients or staff issues or a massive to-do list. And then you're on the way home and you're worrying about all the stuff you didn't get done or stuff that might go wrong. They are constant stressors.
yeah.
And if we never get back to that place of safety, that rest place, we get stuck in that cycle. And eventually that is what leads to burnout. And thinking of it like that made me really understand it more and start to think about it differently. And if I had known that when I was nursing, And it wasn't a case of I could just go in and be like, I'm going to quit my job now. This is too hard, because I had rent to pay and there was so much other stuff. It wasn't an option. But if I understood, okay, if I'm in the stressful environment, if I can just do something in the evening, something really small to try and end that stress from the day, to help me move back to that rest place, I can hold myself out of that place of burnout and just manage it a little bit more. And those tools can be, like, I'm sure you talk about them loads with what you do, like little things like just deep belly breathing, movement, like going for a walk, journaling. I found really helpful just to start moving all my thoughts out onto a page. Having a little toolbox of things that you can say, okay, I know I'm going to be stressed. This is an environment that I have to be in for now. I can't avoid it, but I can arm myself and protect myself by just doing little things. And I think with stress management, sometimes we feel like we need to be doing these huge things for them to have an impact. But actually, if you do little things regularly, that really can help. Like you were only saying to me there, I put up an Instagram story yesterday about how I was going through a bit of a stressful phase. And I kind of know my body now really well. And I know when it's kind of really struggling and in that place. And I noticed that I was getting really teary. I would be going to the gym and I'd have no energy. And then I'd be trying to go to sleep and I'd be really tired, but I'd be wired. Like these symptoms that started to pop up. And I really know that that is not something I want to stay in, that I need to do something now to get in there before it kind of really starts to affect my health. So like I've been doing, just this morning I did like a 15-minute breath work. I'm going to go and meet the girls for a sea swim kind of over the next few days, just leaning into my meditation practice. Or I did a big journaling session the other day. And again, I just have that little toolbox of things. And sometimes, like I did the journaling session, I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better, but I don't feel a huge amount better. But when you combine all of those things, like today, I feel so much better because I've been really intentional with just using things small and often, because I know that my body is just stuck in that stressed place, I call it. And I have to get in there and help it rest. Like I have to, because it doesn't go there by itself, especially if it's our thoughts that are causing it, because your stress response is in your body. And I know for so long I used to be like, okay, I'm not going to be stressed anymore. I've left work, everything is fine. But you can't think your way out of it.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think I have so many things to respond with that. But yeah, that's amazing. Like I think what people think as well, thinking their way out of it, they think quit the job, they think come up with this solution, or even taking time off work. If we just give that as an example, okay, you've reached burnout and you take time off work. A lot of people will be like, I took a week off work. Why am I still stressed? Why am I still feeling like this? And you have to understand, like what you said, each time you have that stressor and you have that stress response, your body is going to release a number of hormones and chemicals within your body, like for example cortisol and adrenaline, and they take quite a lot of time to break down in the body. Okay, so once they're released, they pump around your body, help you with that threat or that danger or that stress response, whether it's real danger or if it's perceived danger. They help you move through it, whether you're fighting, flighting, fawning, shutting down, whatever it is, you will eventually react or adapt to that stressor. Okay, and you might see, okay, for example, a very simple example, if you are in your bedroom and you hear something drop on the floor and you're like, oh my God, what was that? Was that a ghost? Is there someone in the house? Okay. You're feeling it in your body, the cortisol and the adrenaline's pumping around and you're shitting yourself for danger of your life. And then you realize, oh, it was actually the lamp that fell off the table. Okay. And you've like, okay, clear, the danger is gone. That's fine. You still have your heart racing. You still have that sweat. You still have those racing thoughts. Okay. Even though the danger or the threat or the stress is gone, you still feel that afterwards. Okay. And if you have that quite continuously, chronically over time in your workplace, for example, you're always going back into that environment that you associate with these stressors, with this danger, with this threat, you're constantly going to be triggered. And also you're going to be hyper vigilant. Then you're going to be almost on the lookout for that, like what you were saying with your beliefs earlier on. You will create these beliefs that this is an unsafe place, that you have to be alert for these dangers to protect yourself from, or to whatever, to look after your patients with. This is going to be something that you associate this environment with. So it can be very difficult for you to recover from burnout in that environment. And that's what can lead people to be like, I just need to quit this job. I'm just not made for this. I'm just not whatever. And sometimes that is the case, especially what we're saying with the system. If you're not able to cope with that system and that system doesn't help you thrive, some people have had a lot more adversity in their previous lifetime that makes it more difficult for them. Like they're probably like a little bit more sensitive. And I don't want to even use the word sensitive. Like I'm a little bit more sensitive to stressors because of my history with adversity and trauma, but I'm not a sensitive person. Even if I had sensitivity with me and I am emotional and all these different things, there's nothing bad about that as well. So I just want to make sure people, when I'm saying sensitive, it's not in a bad way, because we've all been told you're too sensitive in a bad way. But we have to understand that this is going to be something that builds up over time, and it's going to take time to come back down from that high almost, but it has to be intentional, like what you're saying, being intentional with adding in the things that light you up, whether that's connection, whether that's going and looking at the waves, whether it's being in a sea swim, being in cold water, whatever that looks like for you. And we can very much be so quick to self-abandon in these times because we don't have any energy left. All of our energy has been taken by this environment, and you have this kind of almost dread knowing that you have to go back into this environment the next day or next week or whatever it is. So it's really about seeing what you can start including and how you can start making your present moment experience a little bit more, you're able to tolerate a little bit more. It's a little bit easier to cope with. You're bringing yourself back down into that safe space in your body and your nervous system, and you're breathing through it. And understanding that concept that over time your body can adapt to this chronic stress. So you do need to be intentional with kind of bringing yourself back down. So the concept is called your window of tolerance, where you can quite literally be out of an area where your body feels like it's able to cope or tolerate with stress. Once you kind of go up or down out of that window of tolerance, that's where you can experience things like what you were explaining, and we can all feel that little bit more. Your symptoms of burnout, that can show up differently in everyone, but I'm also the same. I could like be crying, or I could be really reading into what people are saying to me, and like I could even like someone could beep their horn and I could be jumping at the sound of it. So yeah, it's about really being honest with yourself, taking back the reins. Of course, if an environment isn't appropriate for you and you really can't cope in it, you make the long-term plan and move yourself out of there, but don't completely throw any sort of self-care out the window just until that environment changes for you as well.
And I kind of knew like that I was always going to be working towards moving into easier and easier environments and eventually maybe doing something else. But like you said, at the time, you kind of have no choice and you have to be there. Yeah. And I even look back now and like my self-care then was probably like I was so wrecked after a shift. I'd go home, I'd sit on the couch, watch Netflix, have dinner, and then go to bed. And that was what I had the energy for, but that wasn't helping me feel any better. Mm-hmm. And it was only when I started learning about little things, like especially if you've no time, I remember when I was doing nights, I'd sit in the break room because it'd always be empty. There was only a few of us together, and I would listen to a meditation or try and bring my tools in where I didn't need extra time. Do you know, that kind of way, just to help me. And if I had understood the way it worked back then, I would have even brought in like after my shift, just going for like a 15-minute walk or doing 10 minutes of yin yoga before I hit the couch. And I know you're so tired and you don't have the energy for it, but I promise you it will give you energy if you do something small for yourself that will just help you start shifting out of that kind of really stressed out place. But I know it's hard.
And really like set the bar low with that and the expectations low. I think this is where the all or nothing can come in for a lot of people, is like, well, if I'm not doing all these things in my shiny routine, then there's no point in doing anything at all. And it's like, okay, meet yourself where you're at. Do you have absolutely fuck all energy? Do a few breathing exercises. Yeah. Do you have the brain capacity to write full sentences? No. Whip out your journal and write bullet points. It's really meet yourself where you're at. Do not put these expectations on yourself. Take it one baby step at a time. When your nervous system is overwhelmed, procrastination comes through, self-sabotage comes through. We don't really want to do anything, and that's fine, but just set the bar really, really low. So doing that one tiny little step, taking that one tiny step with that tiny task is possible. Like it is something that you can do. And that was another question that people had about transitioning from nursing in the HSE. Was that something that, like what you said, it was something you always kind of envisioned for yourself? Was it something that you did over a few years? Was it something that you just bit the bullet one day and you're like, that's it, I'm gone?
So I remember, even like I always wanted to do nursing because of the time I spent in Crumlin when I was younger. I was like, I'd love to do that. I'd love to help people. And then I got into nursing and I didn't love it so much. I found it really hard. You have a lot of placements. All my friends were going out on the session and having fun, and I was doing 12-hour shifts. And I even remember halfway through my nursing degree being like, I don't want to do this. This is not for me. But I kind of listened to everyone else and being like, oh, well, you've started now and it's a good career option and you should keep going and whatever. So I did anyway. And I always knew, my intuition was always telling me that it wasn't where I should be. But like, it's so scary to act on that, especially when you've gone to college for 4 years, you have a good job, like mom and dad and granny and granddad's being like, oh, well, you'll get a great mortgage. Like it won't be huge, but you'll be able to get one and it's a really solid career option. And I was listening to all of that and it kind of kept me where I was. And then when I started studying nutrition and personal training and stuff, it was more so for me. So it was to help me with my own health. But it kind of rippled into then me being like, okay, I could actually help other people with this. If this has helped me so much with my health, there's space for me to do this with my nursing. And I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I kind of just followed little ideas that I had. So I studied nutrition while I was still nursing full time. I did it part time. And then I gradually moved. I went from palliative care into GP nursing because I was like, okay, this will help me get away from the really stressful environment. I'll have a bit more structure. And I would love to be able to maybe help a few of my patients with their lifestyle as well. So it definitely did not happen overnight. I really just followed little feelings that I had along the way. And I know sometimes from the outside, you can look and be like, oh my God, they just went from nursing or their job right into this career where they work for themselves. And it's no, it doesn't happen overnight. It's like step by step, just following little insights or things that are interesting to you. And then I was in the GP nursing job and I was like, I'd love to start my own clinic. Like, could I do this on the side where I just help people with their lifestyle? I have a room I could rent. And this was just a random idea one day. And then I kind of got out my piece of paper and I was just writing down ideas and stuff. And I put up a flyer in the GP surgery and I said to my boss, I was like, look, I'm going to start working with people to help them with their lifestyle and nutrition and stuff. So if you have anyone, would you send them to me? And little by little, I started getting referrals from him. And I was doing this as well as my nursing job. So it wasn't like one day I walked in, I was like, I quit, I'm going to go out and completely start my own business. It was very much step by step. And when I look back at it now, I'm like, could I have done it any differently? And I don't think so, no, because it was my path of least resistance. It was what I was ready for. It was what I needed to do. And I feel like you're probably the same. Still now, I don't know exactly where I'm going with my career. I'm just kind of going with it and doing like what feels good. I don't think you ever fully know. But for anyone who's thinking about it, listen to your intuition and just take one step at a time. Even if there's something you're interested in, like, could you do a little course about it? Or like one day go on and just have a little look at different jobs that you might be able to apply for and just keep following those little pebbles and see. Like I always said to people, I was like, I'm going to use my nursing and my lifestyle stuff in a different way, but I have no idea how. And that was it. And it kind of just unfolded from there. But I always had the intention to do it. So yeah, it was not an overnight thing. It took time. Like I probably did it over 6 or 7 years, maybe.
Yeah. Me and Robyn were talking just before we started recording about, getting yourself to your vision. It takes time, it takes graft, and it's like we can always be so quick to compare. We were literally talking in depth about like people comparing themselves online, and what we're seeing online at the minute is fucking babies, engagement and houses, and so happy for everyone. But you can very quickly look at that and be like, I should probably be doing that with my life. And you could also look at someone who's built a career in something that you kind of want to get to, someone who looks like they've kind of hit overnight success, and what you don't really see is the years of graft and grind that they've put in to get to there. Some people have overnight success and like power to them, that's amazing, but it doesn't always work that way. And if you have something that you want to work towards, as the saying goes, like yes, putting that time and effort and energy into doing something like that is going to be hard and it's going to take time, but the time's going to pass anyway. So you can choose if you want to, stay where you currently are or move towards a better life, a better, more fulfilled career, whatever it is that you are manifesting and envisioning. And again, manifesting is absolutely a co-creation process that you are envisioning and letting the universe open up doors for you, attracting opportunities, but you are taking action. You are putting the work in yourself. And I think that's what's really important. I love how you have, like, even towards your with your pacemaker and stuff, you're like, I surrender. If this is what's best for me, show me what's best for me and I'll just go with this. And it ended up working out, like what you said, with least resistance as well. So it's really important that you are not comparing yourself to other people and you're just like, okay, so essentially that you're basically moving towards what you want to do and making sure that you know that it's going to be, there's a graft and a grind behind it at the end of the day. Like I was the same as you. I, started saving up for a few months and I was working 2 jobs at the same time. And working 2 jobs when you're already burnt out is not, it's shit. And like I'm all about like everyone, doing their self-care, doing their meditation and really looking after themselves and prioritizing unwinding and stuff. But like there was a period of my life where I had to just throw that out the window and just do what I needed to do for the bigger vision. And what I say to clients is that like stress can be temporary. Okay, you can have a period of massive stress, and if it's temporary and you're working towards something, there's an end date. For example, you say for the next 6 months, I'm going to work 2 jobs, and that's going to be, the transition for the career or whatever. That's going to be something that's, there's an end date. You have a vision. You have something to keep you going. There's a purpose behind why you're doing what you're doing. That's fine. But if you are in a consistent environment of chronic stress and you are, actively knowing that you're continuing to put yourself back in this environment or continuing to behave this way or act this way without doing anything about it or having any sort of potential vision or plan to kind of move yourself out of it, that's not okay. That's just, there's a very big difference between that chronic stress and what can lead to burnout versus something, I suppose that's something we didn't mention, is that kind of vision and that purpose behind stress and like feeling unfulfilled in that burnout as well. So burnout can be the physical task, but if you have a reason for doing, the physical task taking up so much of your energy and it lights you up, that's fine. It might not necessarily lead to burnout. It may lead to physical exhaustion, but maybe not burnout. So yeah, so there's a few different aspects, I suppose, with burnout that we can add in there as well. But did you always have the kind of spirituality and manifesting kind of outlook, or is that something that you kind of developed over time?
I kind of developed that over time. I remember when I was in my first nursing job on night shifts, I would start reading. I was like, okay, there has to be more to this life thing. Like, I can't be given this plan and there's nothing I can do about it. And this is the way where I have to stay forever. So I remember the first book I read was The Secret, classic. I think so many of us started with The Secret. And I remember just, I'm talking about the law of attraction, but kind of this idea that you just ask for something and it just falls into your lap, which is so not true. But that kind of just sparked my interest in and like connecting to something that was bigger than me and being like, okay, there is more to this. Like, I have a say in what way my life goes. And then I went into reading kind of Abraham Hicks and just learning about the power of my thoughts and my beliefs in what direction I was going in my life. So it was kind of from there, from when I finished nursing, like I would have been very skeptical in that, like, I think when nursing as well, like you're very much science-based, like need the evidence and stuff. So part of me was always open to it, but I needed like a bit of evidence and stuff behind it for me to be like, okay, this is legit. Like I can use this stuff in my life. But that kind of, then I just started exploring it a bit more. And kind of starting to deliberately create what I wanted in my life. Like I had a life coach, Judith McAdam. I remember reading her book on one of my night shifts, and at the very back, it was like, oh, I do one-to-one coaching. And she had only released her book really recently. And I was like, my inner voice was like, book a session, just email her and book a session and see what happens. So I did on my night shift. I sent an email, and a few days later, she got back to me and she's like, oh, do you want to come in, whatever, in a week or two? And I went in, and she very much taught me about this whole being able to deliberately create our reality and really decide where we want our life to go. And kind of, she helped me take my power back and learn that my life is not planned out for me. Like I get to decide what direction I want to go in. I can change the trajectory, but it also takes work and it takes action and it takes me really building awareness to say, okay, my thoughts and beliefs about this are not in line with where I want to go. So that really sparked it for me. And now, like, I couldn't imagine where my life would be if I hadn't have learned all about that. Like I still go to her now. Like my husband goes to Judith as well, and he has his own business and he has deliberately created that. And it's so unreal to see because it's so successful. And even some people come in, they look at it and they're like, how does this do so well? And he's like, inside he's like chuckling because he's like, I just get how this works. I get my mindset and how my focus creates my reality. So that's very much where it started. And like I'm still always learning. And yeah, I'm so grateful that I discovered that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know it can seem a bit woo to people, but like manifesting is just creating something tangible in your life. It's not being like, okay, I want this. I'm going to sit back and it's just going to fall out of the sky into my life. Like there's so much more to it than that, but it's using your full power.
Mm-hmm. I love how you mentioned power, because it is very easy to be like, okay, I've had a nursing career now, I've got heart issues, and I'm just a victim of my circumstance, a victim of my health, a victim of my choices to date. And it's like, no, you can actually change that. And that's what's so difficult. It's fucking scarier. Like I never felt ready to make that jump and change my career. I never felt ready to leave Ireland and go to a foreign country that I've never been to before. I've never, like, none of these things are gonna feel good. And I feel, one of my clients said the other day, she wanted to work on confidence, and we're trying to unpack like what that kind of meant and what that looked like for her. She was like, I want to kind of feel like I've no fear. And I'm like, babe, confidence and fear, they coexist. Okay, you can feel confident in yourself and your choices while also seeing fear and looking in the face and being like, I'm still moving forward, I'm still moving through this. Because there is absolutely not a single soul who hasn't taken risks, that hasn't felt fear. It exists and it is going to be there. And sometimes you're not going to be able to push forward, and that's okay. Sometimes it's going to get the better of you, and that's fine. Like, you're human at the end of the day. You can use the tools, you can go a little bit deeper, you can uncover the beliefs as to why you're kind of letting the fear of the unknown kind of take over. Is there something you need to heal within yourself, and so on? But you need to make these scary decisions, and there's nothing else to it. That you just have to go and do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like what you said there, fear will always be there, especially when you're going outside of your comfort zone. But it's also about having little tools to help you move forward with the fear, to be like, okay, I'm a little bit afraid, but fuck it, I'm going to step forward anyway, and I'm going to try this and see what happens. And like there's so much possibility on the other side of your fear and your comfort zone. And like you said earlier on, taking it one step at a time. Like I also really learned that when it comes to kind of deliberately creating stuff in my life, my focus is huge. So what way I'm looking at things. And I always have used like the wheel of life. So to break down the different sections. And I kind of sometimes sit down and I'm like, okay, what kind of momentum am I creating in this part of my life? Is it like kind of more negative, and I'm focusing on what's not working and all the areas that I'm struggling in, or kind of like feeling like a bit of a victim, like that's not working out for me, this is so unfair? Or am I kind of focusing on the stuff that is, things I appreciate, things that feel good to me? And I use that so much. Like I even used it a few weeks ago. I got my journal out and I noticed around my career, I was feeling a little bit negative, bit of negative momentum. I was like, okay, I have to shift my focus here. I need to change how I'm feeling about this. So I'll get out my journal and I'll write it down at the top of the page, and I'll just go in and write down little things that I appreciate about it, or things that are going well, highlight those rather than what's not going well. And I was like, I would love more creative opportunities. I would love to do more collaborations, and just letting myself focus on possibilities and the things that were working. And then I remember I went on to Instagram straight after that, and I was scrolling, and there was like a post from Wellfest. Now, when I say I never, like, it was just a picture. Like, they come up on my feed all the time. I would never go in and read a caption. Like, you have to kind of grab my attention with writing on it, and then I'll go in and read your caption. But I remember scrolling past it, and I was like, my inner voice was like, read the caption. I just got this urge to go in and read it. And it was like, we're looking for content collaborators. If you're interested, reach out and send us a message about what you would like to create for us, and we will get back to you. And I went in, sent them a message, and they got back to me, and I ended up creating a reel for their page or whatever. But if I was focused on the lack and all the stuff that wasn't missing, I never would have went in and checked that post.
Yeah.
And now I know it's because of my subconscious mind. And like our mind, we see what we believe and what we expect. And there was this thing that I always think about, like, say if I was to say to you, if you were in a completely different environment and I said, I want you, Orla, to look around and take in everything in this room that is white. So you go around, you scan the room and you take in everything that's white. And then I say to you, now close your eyes and tell me everything you saw in that room that was red. You see no red because you've highlighted you want your mind to see the
I'm looking
white.
around the room, I'm like, what?
But do you see what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when your subconscious mind shows you what you look out for, what you expect, what you believe. And we can use that to also grow and expand and create new things in our life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You're making so much
Yeah.
sense. And I
Yeah.
think just to point out as well for people with, like, if you're in a state of chronic stress and if you're in a state of burnout or you've had history of trauma or adversity, it is difficult for you to kind of think positive. And I saw something about this the other day, and it's like typical kind of life coaches, and like no shame, like literally what you said, like a life coach transformed your life, but without this kind of understanding of where you're currently at or your previous history with stressors and your nervous system, it can be very difficult for you to tap into that. So just for anyone listening, if you feel like you are trying to think positive and shift your focus and stuff, that can take quite a good bit of time if you have got that like history or that's where you're currently at. So I
Yeah.
think a big thing for me starting off that journey with like trying to think positive and stuff like that was like, it's not working. I'm not matching, there's like this guilt and the shame that I'm not matching the frequency for manifestation because I'm not feeling good and I'm not thinking positive. And I think the Abraham Hicks book for me was one that kind of even emphasized that more, because it was
Yeah.
really about how you're thinking. And I was like, I'm fucking up my whole life because I can't think positive.
This is my fault.
Yeah,
Yeah.
quite literally. So just for anyone listening, I just really want to add that, because this all stuff absolutely can transform your life, but sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult for some people than others to shift from, like what you said in the simple kind of example of shifting from the different colors or trying to see new opportunities and stuff like that. But for some people, they're so hardwired to
Mm.
see the negative or to be trying to protect themselves from danger at the end of the day, that it's more difficult to see those positives. So yeah, just give yourself a little bit more space, use the tools, regulate, breathe, all that good stuff as well.
100%. And I love that you said that, because even the way I was saying about feeling really off the last kind of week or so, like I like asked me to sit down and write a gratitude list. I could not find a single thing. I couldn't shift how I was feeling. I was just
Yeah.
in a place where I wasn't able to change it at all. And before I would have been like, oh, well, I'm not being positive or I'm not doing good at it. Whereas now I'm like, oh, that is so okay. Like that is more than okay. And I even put up a post on my Instagram yesterday, and it was literally like, if you're struggling, you do not have to force yourself to be positive, because there's nearly this, like the guilt that comes with not being positive. And it was only one of my friends, I was voice noting her, just she was checking in to see how I was doing. And there was kind of one area in my life that I was really struggling with. And she was like, yeah, but you don't have to force yourself to be positive about this. Can you just pull it back and be like, I'm just going to be neutral. I don't want to be positive. I'm not going to be negative. I'm just going to pull myself back. I'm just sitting in the middle, and no shame for me not feeling on top of the world and being like, my life is so good and everything's going so well.
Yeah.
And that is so important, because if you feel really guilty for not being positive and you're feeling ashamed of it, you feel worse and worse. Like there's space for every spectrum, every emotion on the spectrum. Like there's space for them all. And even little things, like I used to struggle to let myself cry, really uncomfortable with crying. And over the last few days, I don't know, I've just been crying so much. But like I was saying to myself, I was like, oh, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I crying so much? This shouldn't be happening. And I was like, no, no, like we don't do that anymore. You are absolutely fine to cry. There's nothing wrong with you if you're crying. There's nothing wrong with you if you're having a day where you're not feeling great or you can't see anything positive. That is okay.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. Like I think for people, with burnout and stress is that they'll be so stuck in this state of, I don't want to feel like this anymore. And it's like sometimes you just have to let yourself get fucking angry. Sometimes you have to allow yourself to feel that rage, that frustration with your current situation. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of women don't want to go there because their association of anger is bad and they don't want to be ungrateful and they don't want to be insert whatever here. And
Mm.
like, when's the last time that you let yourself just fucking scream and get rage in your body and shake it
Yeah.
off and just like write a let instead of writing a gratitude list, write I'm fucking angry because of XYZ list. Okay. That's what we need to do, is to give yourself permission to have the, like what you said, the full spectrum of emotions and actually feel that. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. Like we don't judge happiness, we don't judge gratitude because it feels good, but we're
Mm.
so quick to judge and suppress and avoid the quote unquote bad emotions, but they are the exact same. They come up to be released, like what you said with crying. It's just a release of emotions, but we
Yeah.
label them and we try and stop them because of our association with them and because of judgment and everything else in between. But I
And
know, I know for people with burnout, it's you don't want that to be a current situation. You don't want to be constantly crying. You don't want to be constantly angry. You don't want to be this what we'll consider to be a quote unquote negative version of ourselves. But it's like sometimes you just have to let yourself be in that version so that you can move through it. And what you often find is when you release and surrender to that, you get a little bit angry and you're like, all right, I'm fine now.
like so much, even yesterday, like I went into work and I was really struggling just to get anything done. And I went to the gym and when you're just on the verge of bursting into tears the whole time, it's like, okay, no, you need a bit of rest. You need a bit of time. So I went home, moved some work stuff around, which I know I'm so lucky to be able to do. But for the first time in ages, I literally just let myself sit on the couch and cry. I was just like, I think this is a year and a half or 2 years of emotions that I haven't let myself bring to the surface. And now they're just coming out. And anytime I got the urge to cry, I was like, it's okay, you can cry. And I'd say anyone looking in at me was like, Jesus, she is in a bad way in there. But I felt really good after it. It was just like my body felt lighter. And I know that's like crying is a way that your body ends a stress response. It's literally releasing.
Yeah.
But we're so ashamed of struggling or things not going well and feeling like we don't have all of our shit together that naturally then we can try and push down those emotions. So I think that's really important.
And it requires less energy as well. If
Yeah.
you are trying to put on this facade and put on this mask and be a positive person to be around and people pleasing with that, that's going to require so much energy, of energy that isn't fucking there in the first place. So why not
Mm-hmm.
just meet yourself where you're at? Like stop worrying about other people and look at yourself first and be with yourself first. Give yourself permission to be in that space, because you will move through it a lot quicker. And if like you want to be a little cynical bitch for a hot minute, fucking go for it. You want
Do it.
to
Yes.
I think, yeah, I
To.
think, huh?
You have to do it. You have
Yeah.
to, like, nobody doesn't have those days.
Mhm.
Like, they don't exist. Like, you're human and it's part of life. Like, I think the one thing as well I used to think when I started getting into spirituality was like, okay, if I have this down, it means that nothing will ever be hard again and life will always feel good. No, life will never be only easy. But I do find now that just the tools do help me with navigating those harder times and holding space and being like, this is okay because I know that it will pass, even though it feels really shitty in the moment. And especially those phases in life you're going through and you're like, all right, I want to talk to who's in charge here because shit just keeps going wrong. And one thing after another just feels like it's really hard. But that's normal. Like there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong if you have a load of bad days in a row.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I have a question for you.
Yes.
What three pieces of advice would you give to your younger self?
What three pieces of advice would I give her? Oh my God, there's so much I would give her. Um, Probably the first one would be around trusting her intuition a bit more, that it's okay to listen to what she wants. She doesn't have to follow what everyone else is doing and everyone else's path, that it's okay to follow her own and that things will be okay. Um, Second piece of advice, God, that she will be okay. Like that she really will be okay, even if it feels like everything's falling apart, that she will absolutely be okay. Even if stuff doesn't work out, she'll be okay. Um,
Mm,
and the third would probably be that she's a lot more powerful than she ever realized. like that she can do and be a lot more than she ever thought she could. And that's so funny you said that, because I always put this on my Instagram, but I literally have a picture of her on my desk,
Oh,
because I always use her to like just try and be more compassionate, or to just think about how I'm speaking to her. Like even yesterday when I had kind of a bit of an off day, like I just pictured her and I was like, okay, what does she need? What do I need to say to her? And try to just change that inner voice and how I'm speaking to myself. And I find it really helpful.
I love that. I love that. Feel that in my soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think inner child work is really good for people to do if you have kind of negative self-talk, and even like reframing it. Like, would you talk to your friend like that? Like, absolutely fucking not. So, what you said about power, take it back. Be your own bestie. If you're going through a fucking hard time, be there for yourself. Okay. At the end of the day, no one else is going to come save you. You have to do it for you. So why not be a nice person to be around for yourself at the
Yeah.
end of
Be
the
on
day?
your own side.
Mm-hmm.
Stop not being on your side.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell people listen where they can find you and a little bit more about your services?
Yeah. So my Instagram is at the wellness nurse IRE, so IRE for Ireland. And I have a website that's thewellnessnurse.ie. In terms of working with me, I actually have an online membership called The Space, that I very much created to give women the tools that we've been talking about, and the space to be able to check in with themselves and to learn how to meditate and just give themselves a bit of time. And the idea of it is that they kind of have a little appointment with themselves once a week. So we have like our live meditation is this evening, and we all just get together and just go in and kind of fill up our cups from within us.
Mm.
So that's the main way. And then I also do one-to-ones as well. I do wellness coaching for stress management, self-care, that kind of thing. So yeah, and I also have a podcast, the Wellness Nurse podcast as well, that Orla has been on. So yeah,
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a gorgeous chat. Go
thanks,
give
Ross.
Robyn some love. And as always, if you found this episode helpful, pass it on to someone who, maybe going through burnout at the minute, maybe in a similar career and going through different things that might need these words of encouragement. And if you found this episode helpful, would always appreciate the double tap of the ratings on Spotify and Apple as well. But yeah, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.